to John also. She's had a family situation of some kind and asked me to start the meeting, at least get us down to first 3 or 4, down to where we go. So that being said, I think the rest of us are here, so I will call this meeting to order. And if we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
and
for which it stands,
for which it stands,
nation
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, liberty,
with liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is approval of the minutes. I do have one slight change to suggest, and that was in item 10 when we talked a little bit about the senior tax freeze. The first sentence or so was not quite correct in terms of how we came about it. And I would like to suggest, Lauren, I can send you an email with these words a little later, assuming we all agree.
I don't do your minutes. Terry does, and she's on. So if you give her the correction, I'm sure she's typing it right now.
Okay, I didn't. Okay, good. So this is the first sentence. Mr. McPherson noted that ordinance 20-11 required the Board of Finance to set up a committee to review the ordinance after 5 years. So that's how we came to have to do this. It was not the Board of Selectmen or something like that. So with that, any other changes? Hearing none, if there are no objections, the minutes will stand approved as noted. Next up is chairman's comments, followed by finance member comments and citizens comments. I do have a couple of comments as a member. One of them is that I think we've all gotten the letter from about Deb Millardo's resignation, and I would just like to wish her well. She did a very good job. I'm sorry to see her leaving. It will be the town's loss. And again, as I said, I wish her well. The second topic is a little more substantive. We have a special meeting coming up in December the 6th, to take up that $1.3 million to a special appropriation to buy the Jansen property for the new school, contingent upon it passing when it comes to a town vote. I am not in favor of that, and I'll be speaking against it when it comes up. I think that that 1.3 million needs to be included in the total package of the school. Madison's mantra for forever has been that we will bond for land and buildings. And this is land, and without the land, you have no place to build a school. I think it's not really transparent to peel off little pieces and not have that included. This is my opinion. And there's also, I'm concerned, I'm not sure that the $79 million bond issue includes money for the water main to get the water wherever it's going to come from to the new school, and also a bridge across the wetlands connecting it to, it doesn't include that. So, that's going to be I would think, an integral part of it to connect it with the rest of the town campus. So those are my objections to it. I just want to be perfectly clear that, let everybody know where we stand so we don't come up at the last minute and be surprised. Okay, and those are my comments. Anybody else have any comments?
Go ahead, John. Go ahead, John.
Yeah,
No,
go ahead,
Justin. Go ahead.
No, I guess I have 3 things, if you don't mind. First, I think I would echo Fillmore's comments just in the sense that if we're approving a school, I've said this before, we should just look at the total budget, however it's financed, whether it's bonded or paid. We should look at the entire budget for the school, everything included. So I think I would echo Fillmore's comments on that. The second comment I just want to make is just a plug for the turkey trot, which is back in public this coming Thanksgiving. Back live, with an actual race versus or run and walk versus virtual. So, JC's, just a shout out to them. They're a great organization and they do so much good right here within Madison. So I know everyone knows about it, but I want to, on the record, since we have, thousands of people watching this on YouTube, I just want to let people know that.
At least.
And my last comment, similarly, because we have so many people out there, I know we're voting on a new chair and vice chair, and really regardless of how that decision comes about, I wanted to say this ahead of time for that reason. And unfortunately, Jean is not here with us, but I just want to thank Jean, who I think has done an excellent job for Madison as chair of the Board of Finance during her time, and regardless of whether or not that continues. And for me personally, really the reason I'm on the Board of Finance is because I sat down and had a talk with Jean, before deciding. And of course, she lied to me and told me it was fun and easy and didn't take that much time. So, but anyway, I do want to, on the record, just thank her for her leadership. And I think, she was a great asset in that role and did a lot for the town of Madison. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks.
And I hope those comments didn't scare off Cindy and Katie. But
Not easily scarable, Fillmore.
There you go.
It's lots of fun. Lots of fun.
any other board member comments?
Yeah, Fillmore, if you don't mind, on a similar note to Justin's, and I do want to thank Gene, however this goes forward, but I also want to thank Ken Kaminsky. I mean, Ken, I didn't get, he got off the board, people volunteer their time. They're really dedicated. They help out. And I know Happy was here for a short period, and Jude, who I learned a lot from. So I want to thank all three of them for serving and doing an excellent job. It does require, regardless, Justin is, of what Gene said, how little time it takes. It does require a great deal of time and effort. And I want to thank them for their service. And of course, welcome Cindy and Katie. I know we'll do an excellent job.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other comments? Lauren, do we have any citizen comments? Anybody raise their hand out in the public?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move to new business. Item 5, discuss and take action to approve naming a chair and a vice chair. Anybody care to make a nomination? I see Miss Katie.
Thank you. I am really honored to nominate John Picard for the role of chair of the Board of Finance. John comes to us with a wealth of experience in municipal government, as well as experience on the Board of Finance. And so I know that he will do a wonderful job leading us. I know he's keenly aware of the challenges that are before us, and I have no doubt that he will lead us well. And so I would be happy to offer my nomination for him.
Good, thank you. And I will join in as a member and agree with those comments. And I'm most pleased to second John's nomination. Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none.
Can we have some discussion about it?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, John.
Fillmore's just moving it along.
No, I kind of carrying forward from what I said about Gene, and I'm relatively new to this, but when I heard that, that there might be a possible change, of course, my first reaction is, why are we changing? If if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's not like the board, switched, to majority. We're still 3-3. So my first inclination was why change at all? But I came to be, educated on the fact that there is, I guess, a precedent where maybe as a principle or a courtesy that the, first selectman's party maybe that's fair that the chair of the boards would also be from the same party. So when I learned that, that makes perfect sense. That made sense to me. So I just want to, having said everything in complimentary for Jean, certainly for her role in that, I think John is a great, he's a great person for that role. So so thanks very much, John, for stepping up.
Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion about John or anybody else? Okay, in that case, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of John Picard as our new chairman, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Wow, it's unanimous.
Congratulations, John.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Katie.
And I will turn the gavel, the figurative gavel over to you.
Thank you, Fillmore. And I also do want to thank Jean for her leadership and chairmanship, and I appreciate that. And I hope everything's okay. The next order of business is to elect a vice chair. Are there nominations for vice chair? Don't all jump at once.
Yeah, I will continue talking and say I would like to see a Jean Fitzgerald as the vice chair. We've said all the good things about her, so there's no need for me to repeat that. But she's experienced in leadership. She's shown good balance on this board. So I will nominate Jean as the vice chairman.
There's a nomination for Jean, and Fillmore's not just doing that because she's not here and she can't say no, but no, just kidding. No. Nomination for Jean for vice chair. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So Justin, seconded by Justin. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Or is there any discussion for vice chair? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All right.
It's unanimous also. Congratulations, Jean. Thank you, Fillmore.
You're welcome.
So the next order of business is we have our first select woman here, Peggy Lyons, is going to provide a presentation on the Academy School. Peggy, are you ready?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Congratulations, John, and congratulations, Jean. Good to see everybody here, and welcome to the new members.
Thank
I
you.
also asked Bill Stableford to join me for this. And if you'll be patient for a second, I will share my screen. Why am I not seeing the presentation? Here it is. Okay, great. Okay. Hold on a second. Is that? Yep. Great. Okay. So, well, I know this is your first meeting as a new board. So, just as I did with the Board of Selectmen, we're starting right out of the box with a big topic. And I know you're all very familiar with Academy and the history, but I thought it was important that we kind of walk through a discussion and history that the Board of Selectmen has been talking about over the last couple of months about the community center proposal. So I will, if you bear with me, we will have a somewhat lengthy presentation. I'll kind of speed through it, and then you can, ask questions at the end, and you'll get a copy of this after the meeting. Unfortunately, Mark Skalenka could not be here, so Bill Stableford and I are going to kind of tag team a little bit the Collier's piece of this as well. So with that, why are we here? To talk about what I consider a very transformational opportunity for downtown Madison. And we can see how right now, over at least 15 years, we've had a building that has been vacant and kind of an eyesore in our downtown. And this is an opportunity to turn it into something incredibly vibrant that the community will benefit from. History, and I think probably maybe even Fillmore can give even more details on this, but there's a long history of trying to figure out what to do with the building. Multiple committees, recommendations, but no action. And then back in 2018, there was a decision by previous boards to take the ideas to a public poll. And that was conducted in November 2018, and it was a scientific poll conducted by an outside organization that led to a majority of the people supporting the use as a community center. And I think with that, then the Board of Selectmen opted to put a committee together to study the community center proposal back in 2019. And that group came back and came up with a final recommendation to the Board of Selectmen in July 2019. After that happened in January, it was decided to put the potential bonding project into the town's capital improvement program. And the Board of Selectmen voted to adopt a timeline for an October 2020 referendum. And that was going to be put on the same ballot as the Madison School Renewal Plan. And that was following the guidance that the Board of Finance had provided, that they felt that the community needed to have these projects simultaneously on the same ballot so the public could understand the choices that were out there for their tax dollars. And then obviously the pandemic hit in March. And I think a lot of people were very nervous about moving forward on large capital projects with so much economic uncertainty because of COVID. And so we didn't do nothing on the project. We put it on hold. But in the meantime, the town had engaged a consulting firm to do a townwide facilities audit and conditions assessment. And Academy was part of that exercise. And that also identified town needs and came up with some departments in town that were identified as having specific needs for more space. And so when that report came back, knowing that we were kind of coming off the pandemic a little bit more, and we knew that we were in much better financial situation, and there was also a cry out from the public, we need to start moving forward on these referendums so we can make decisions. I proposed some next steps to the Board of Selectmen for Academy, and that's kind of what drew us to the proposal we have today. So I put together a working group, and that included Bill Stableford, who was chair of the previous Academy Community Center Design Committee, as well as Al Goldberg, who had been selectman liaison to that committee. And then we re-engaged Colliers that had prepared a lot of the materials for the previous proposal 2 years ago. I also pulled in more town staff this time to be an active part of the discussion. Including, Scott Cochran and Austin Hall and our facilities director. And basically, what did we come up with? Well, we knew that because of the report and multiple reports that Youth and Family Services was bursting at the seams and needed almost pretty much double the current space that they had, or more than that. And so they were looking for an improvement. We also knew that there was some needs at Town Hall that the DRA report identified. And so we came to the conclusion that it would make sense to move Youth and Family Services into the building, as well as Beach and Rec. And these had all been flagged also 2 years ago in 2019 by Bill's committee. But what we did is we just put a little bit more substance and detail around how it would look if they were to come into the building. So really the only change from the proposal 2 years ago is there's about 7,000 square feet that we've identified for specific town purposes. The other thing is we updated the project costs. We just basically took the plan from before, made some slight modifications, and that increased the budget by an additional $1 million to reflect current construction costs. And then we tried to solve some questions that had come up in the public 2 years ago about community needs for community space, and what programming could be in the building. So we tried to tackle some of those questions just to be ahead of those, because we knew the public would be asking for them. So the big takeaway was the municipal use identified, space identified, as I mentioned, tying back to the DRA study. In particular, Youth and Family Services, we have several reports talking about that they need about, anywhere from 5,500 to 6,000 square feet to really offer their services given current staffing. We also know that it could cost north of $2 million to renovate their current building. So it just seemed to make a lot of sense. And then moving Beach and Recreation out of town campus and into Academy also freed up space to address some of the space issues identified by DRA in town campus. So that would free up the whole Beach and Recreation. Plus, the idea is that Beach and Recreation would be kind of the overall manager of the building, and so it made sense for them to be housed in the building. So I think I thought it would be helpful to show you Collier's presentation, which I will pull up real quickly because it does have a floor plan, updated floor plan and budget analysis. And then Bill was going to work with me on kind of walking through the Collier's piece. Here we go. So this is just kind of a, once again, a layout of the square footage. And you can see on there that we have the departments identified. And I think one of the discussions was, you know, rather than giving like a whole floor to town departments, we tried to figure out what space made the most sense for different purposes. And we identified space on the upper level for Youth and Family Services offices. And then a space on the lower level for more of their youth programming services. And that was after a lot of work. I don't know if Scott Cochran's on this meeting tonight, but really worked a lot with Scott Cochran and learned about their, and Collier spent a bunch of time about what they need and how we could make this building suit their needs, and came up with, I think, a really good plan for that. And then we also just kind of identified on the main level about 1,000 square feet for Beach and Recreation. But otherwise, this is pretty much kind of the similar profile of what was presented 2 years ago in terms of the community space.
Peggy,
So I don't know, Bill, if you want to.
yes, if you want to go back to that, I just want to highlight, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Peggy. I just want to highlight on these square foot numbers that even though Beach and Rec and Madison Youth and Family Services are coming into the building, we reserved very ample space for community spaces. You'll see that listed throughout the slide here. And again, this will all be, the focus is on flexible scheduling, flexible use patterns, so that each community space in the building can potentially house multiple different activities, groups, and organizations. So if you look at the community spaces, it's still very, very significant, and plenty of room for residents to come up with creative ideas for meeting and activity space.
And then the next couple of slides just kind of show more of a detailed floor plan. And like I said, you'll get a copy of this after the meeting. It's been available on the website actually over the last week, but it identifies, like on the lower level, I think the yellow here, the youth development area, which is where a lot of the programming would happen. And they were very excited about using the space. I think 2 years ago, there had been a little hesitancy about, oh, the basement. But when you actually go and tour the space down there, it's actually really good space, and there is a lot of light. And with the renovation improvements and everything, I think it's going to be really nice space for them. And they were very excited about that, his team. And then on the main level, this is no different than what was presented before. We've just identified Beach and Rec would be kind of in the main area here with office spaces. And so it gets them close to, you know, the auditorium and the gym. And so this was kind of highlighted as where they would likely be located, which is just roughly 1,000 square feet. And then on the upper floor, this was identified in yellow as a good spot where you could have kind of secure access for client services for Youth and Family Services, as well as their offices. But it still allowed plenty of, you know, art space, community space on this floor. And it gave them kind of a confined area that they could have their operations consolidated here in terms of staff. And I think it was important that, you know, people that are going to be there all day, they have bright windows, you know, they're together. And so this was kind of the identified location that might work for them. And then, and so this is kind of the floor plan. This just gives you a site overview. I know we had some questions about parking. There's ample parking. The 91 spaces does not include any of the street parking along Academy that you could also have, or other spaces in front of other town buildings. And so the view was that, at least the recommendation from the consultants when they talked to the architect and everything, this is ample parking just based on, you know, this preliminary design that you would have enough parking. This is just kind of an overall site vision. And I think this highlights again, this idea of a bookending concept of a cultural corridor where you have the library on one end and you have Academy School on the other. And we'll talk a little bit more about how this feeds into more of a historic campus concept in terms of our long-term downtown planning. But it gives a nice visual to show how it would be great to have this part of kind of the vibrancy of downtown. Next slide is just the budget. And this is comparing what had been put together in 2018. And really the major change is the construction costs. As we know, construction costs have gone up. And then there was some changes to how the space was renovated. So if you're renovating for offices versus just big rooms, obviously there's a different cost component to that. And so those were some adjustments that were made in terms of the estimates for renovation. There's also a contingency built into this, a healthy contingency. And once again, this all came from Colliers with their sources. And if you have more detailed questions, I'd be happy to arrange a time you talk to him, or you can talk directly to Mark to dig into if you have some concerns about the construction budget. So that's kind of the Colliers piece of this. And then I just want to get back to the presentation because it's a lot to absorb. Where are we? Here we go. Back to this piece. So that shows the kind of floor plan ideas. And I don't know, is Austin on, Lauren? No? Basically, yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. So I'll let Austin maybe spend a few minutes because, I think his thoughts on this are important, and they're working on developing programming ideas, for if this were to pass. And he would also be responsible for staffing the building. And so, Austin, if you want to spend a minute or two just talking about the advantages to Beach and Rec for the building.
Sure, thank you. So currently, really our only activity space, indoor activity space that Beach and Rec has is the town campus gym. So any additional space that we can have will only let us program activities more for our entire community. And with access to an additional full-size basketball court, 130-seat theater will be huge for not only Beach and Rec offerings, but the entire sort of arts community along the shoreline will all greatly benefit from that. We have meeting space at the senior center, which we book out for, local groups and nonprofit organizations. But the rooms are of, a size where you can't fit, large groups all at the same time in one building. So this will also increase the number of rental spaces that we can have for various organizations throughout Madison and along the shoreline. Also with a commercial kitchen, we have, we've been contacted by vendors that sell goods at the local farmers markets on town greens, and a lot of those items need to be produced in commercial kitchens. So that's an opportunity for us, as well as cooking classes for all ages would be a huge asset to the town. And just having a place where kids of all ages and adults of all ages can gather and create and socialize and learn in a setting that's safe and welcoming, especially being downtown where you have great access to all the local eateries and shops. The location couldn't be any better. I think the amount of benefits that having Academy will bring to not only my department, but the greater Madison area, will be a very pleasant experience for everybody.
Okay, great. And then I think, the other thing the Beach and Rec is doing currently is they're actually doing a survey out there to assess kind of demand for other programming. What gaps do we have in what we offer the community? What would people like to see? And so that would be all information that would be helpful in terms of driving future programming. And I'll talk a little later about, because I know we had some questions at the Board of Selectmen about, well, you know, how are these rooms going to be used? Is it going to be, you know, nonprofit groups? Is it all going to be Beach and Rec programming? I think the intention here is to have it, you know, some Beach and Rec, but primarily community driven. And I think the policies and all that is something that would have to be developed by an independent committee. Because you're going to have a lot of different interests competing. You're going to have a pricing policy set up. And I think the town has to set some priorities about what the revenue objectives would be for the building. But with that, I see Scott's on. So let's go on to, and Scott can talk a little bit about, I don't know what's going on with oh, here it is. I lost my mouse. There we go. It's back. So the benefits of, you know, being an academy and what it provides to Madison Youth and Family Services.
Thanks, Peggy. And I just want to offer my congratulations on Board of Finance members, whether it was your election or re-election. Great group that you have, and look forward to working with you all. So it's first important for all of you to know that, you know, Madison Youth and Family Services, as Peggy mentioned, we are really, we've outgrown our building for quite some time now. So this is not a new issue probably for many of you to hear from me that we're in need of bigger space and better design space for our purposes. And those purposes include mental health services, social services. We have a large amount of what we refer to as youth development and prevention program that we do. And those programs involve youth directly. You know, good examples of those are Peer Advocate program at the high school, where we're training groups of high schoolers to understand better their own needs and support the needs of their peers. That's a program that's been running for 30 years and is a benchmark for us. So our needs when it comes to spacing are varied. So we do need larger spaces where we can control them and have them for larger groups of students youth that we would meet with or train. We also need more private spaces, secure spaces where we can have smaller offices for counseling, for social services, things of that nature. So that's kind of how we got to this point. And we, as this has come up before, you know, I think the question has brought outside consultants, one in 2017, to look specifically at our space and how we're using our current space. That's where we got the 6,000 square foot or so number. And then another one that was done just over in 2020, Loretta J with CCM looked at our clinical services, kind of weighing and evaluating their cost effectiveness, their role, their purpose. And it was a really strong endorsement of not only, you know, what we're providing, but how we're providing it. And just reinforced a lot of the things I think we've said for a long time in terms of the need for our services and how we're going about it. So when it came to...
You want me to go ahead? Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Keep on this one?
Yeah, well, the next, that's fine. So like,
Okay, yeah.
I think you can do the next, there you go. So when, you know, we were approached about being involved in the academy renovation, I think, you know, I've said this at other times, it wasn't something that we ran to, in part because, you know, this has been a very complicated project over the years, and our space needs were very specific. So like, how would they sort of meet with what the vision was for academy? And as I got more involved and I got my staff more involved, I'd have to say we really got excited over this potential, because that space on the upper level that was mentioned, that could be secure spaces specific for counseling, social services. The space on the lower level, without really, other than really cleaning it up, could be left without really a lot of extra attention and construction to that area, because it's open spaces with some office space down there. It really fit nicely with our youth development. So for us, it really just, it knocked off a lot of the things on our checklist that we needed for our space. And it's something that we feel like the town really does benefit from. So it would save this question from being asked again and again by me and my board, the people who know what we do. It saves substantial time, energy, the money that it would cost to create a separate project for us to either renovate our space or create more space for us somewhere else. I mean, I think having us downtown, and this has always been a big thing for us, the awareness of our programs and our services is critical in terms of benefiting the town residents who need them or would want them. It's often that, you know, people are surprised that we offer as much as we do and as well as we do it. So I think having us downtown, it just gives people more awareness and access to what we're doing. Also gives us a lot more opportunities to collaborate with Beach and Rec staff, with the other tenants in the building, to interact with the public in ways that we aren't as much doing now, because there's not as much reason to have public coming in and out and around our building as it is now. And speaking of our building, if we move, this frees up 10 School Street, and that could be for a town purpose, that could be for a community purpose. It's really, it's a quaint, historic building that really could be looked at in a lot of different ways. Our programs benefit if we're able to do this. It gives us enough square footage, we can design it to what we need. And, you know, it gives us a home, which is what we've been asking for, at least a little bit larger home than we have now.
Right.
So with that, if there's questions about why us or what we're doing, you know, feel free to ask later on. Thank you.
Okay, great. The other thing I just wanted to comment on, had been some, you know, questions about, do we need the space? You know, we don't need the space. We have a lot of community space. And I think it was a struggle because we don't track all this data on a regular basis for our meeting room space to come up with any kind of formulaic approach about bookings and everything, but we tried to do what we could. And we did do a survey of all the public space. And we used Colliers to do this. And they basically came back with they kind of looked at the quality of the rooms. They looked at the usage. Some of it was based on actual room booking data, and some of it was based on, you know, staff interviews and going around and meeting different staff and talking about the meeting space that they use and programming space. And, you know, the conclusion had been that there are, you know, about 17 kind of community use rooms that the town uses. And that does include library space as well. And 12 of those are considered high use. So, you know, a vast majority of them are used heavily, and then 4 of medium use. And then in terms of the quality of the space, you know, actually, I was kind of surprised at this because I think, you know, quality can be a little bit of a subjective approach, but, you know, they looked at ADA access, they looked at like air conditioning technology, and they said that, you know, of the high usage rooms, the rooms are somewhat considered high quality, and that, you know, there's pretty much, we have access to stuff, but they're highly used. And I think I've always heard over and over again, and even just sitting in this seat, people getting turned away a lot. And I can speak especially when it comes to gyms, because I learned a lot about the need for gym space over the last 2 years. So, so there is a demand out there for more space, and that's just for existing people that come to this. If you layer on new program and new opportunities, which is really the point of this isn't just to fulfill a current demand. This is creating a new opportunity for the town. So we're creating more need and more desire to come to Madison, and we're drawing groups to Madison. I mean, as a parent, and all of you, you know, have had kids in this town, we've all driven to other towns to attend, whether it's theater groups or pottery classes or music programs. Oftentimes, you know, Madison dollars are going to other towns to fund programs in other towns, and they're going to other town facilities to have that programming. So that's not captured in this, but I thought it was important to at least do some sort of assessment of this. And this study is available online. And so and then the other thing is we just have some more follow-up work, but these are just things that are going to be ongoing. The Academy Committee did an extensive review and interviews with community organizations. We're going to go back and talk to some of those again, just now with this new this new proposal, which is really, like I said, only allocating some space to town services. And also just get some feedback on COVID, and how that's changed their views. And then Beach and Rec and Youth and Family Services are focusing on like what programs do they want to offer? What does this opportunities, does the new space provide for them? And then the other work that needs to be done that I think is going to be ongoing as the project evolves is the usage policies and pricing strategy. And I think there's a lot to weigh here. And this is going to be a community conversation. To me, this doesn't have to happen until you have the building approved. You've got this great space, and now you have to, while the building's being renovated, figure out how do you balance maintaining the affordability versus covering operating costs, and how much is going to be town programming versus outside organizations. And then how much is going to be like commercial use, like business owners that want to come in and run their own private dance classes versus things that are run through Beach and Rec programming. So those are all discussions that will need to happen. And I think some policy guidelines set by the board ultimately. And then also we've already had some good brainstorming discussions about Youth and Family Services building if it's vacated. I'm an advocate for us establishing a permanent facilities committee, and I'm going to initiate that. We started to initiate it. It kind of got put on hold a little bit earlier this year, but I would like to see that move forward in January so that rather than having to have ad hoc committees every time we have a vacant building, we have a plan and we have a vision and we have, a team looking at all the different buildings and weighing the benefits and risks of different decisions for the buildings under one committee. And I know Justin was very involved in the facilities committee earlier this year. That was really not an official committee. This would be one that would be set up formally by the Board of Selectmen with a formal charge, and it would be covered under FOIA and had members of the public as part of that. So talking a little bit more revenue, so it's hard to, identify the specifics of the revenue, but I think a goal would be to obviously cover our operating costs, not the debt service, but the operating costs at least of the building and what our pricing would be. We'd probably look at very different pricing than what we do right now through some of our Beach and Rec programming. Staffing, I think the feedback that was that we would need somebody working, a later shift that day to oversee the building from like 3 until however late the building's open, because it's going to be a very busy building all day. And then we would need 2 full-time custodians to maintain and keep the building going. And then operating costs, these are guesstimates. That was just really based on the senior center of approximately $100,000 a year on utilities, and then just ongoing maintenance needs of around $30,000. And we had a discussion at the Board of Selectmen about more green technology, putting geothermal in this. We're doing some more research on that. I mean, I think as a goal, we should always be looking to have any new construction include modern technologies that save us from fossil fuels. But I think there's also some grant opportunities, perhaps pay for those types of improvements. And the idea was that we would target grants to help fund any additional costs that putting those types of systems into the building would cost, especially as we all know there's a lot going on right now, both at the federal and state level, to encourage people to make these investments in the newer technologies for construction projects. And then what is it going to cost? So this is, basically a $15 million project that was originally $14 million. Now we're estimating $15 million. And if you look at what the average cost of the bonds, this is not how much your taxes are going to go up, because your taxes are driven by a whole host of things. This is just what is the cost of the actual debt that we're incurring. The average over the life of the financing would be approximately $27 per $100,000 of assessed value. So you would take that number and multiply it by whatever the assessed value is on your house. And I just want to highlight again that it is, I think some people think you just take that number and you staple to the top of your tax bill, and that's going to be what happens. Your taxes are driven by the budget. They're driven by the town's revenue, growth in the grand list, and then other funding sources that we bring into play. So there'll be a lot of, and then also the reduction in debt service, which we are seeing right now because the high school bonds are disappearing over here over the next 5-year period. So as we pay down that debt. So, but this gives you an idea of what this project would add on to the budget overall for the town. And once again, I think there's going to be a huge focus on grants. We actually hired a consultant to review our entire capital improvement plan, as well as this project, to identify grants that we would be eligible for, and what we would have a high likelihood of getting. And so I'm looking forward to getting some feedback on that in the next couple of weeks about, and this is a professional organization that does this across the country. So they're experts in this area. So rather than kind of saying, oh, we're going to go for the typical stuff that we do, this is really taking a big look at this. And so we're going to try to go after as many grants as possible. And then timeline, the Board of Selectmen has had multiple presentations on this, but if we look at the November 8th meeting we just had, and then this is the first look by the Board of Finance. Our board is meeting again on the 22nd, Monday, so we would be voting to recommend moving this project forward, and we would also refer it to you, the Board of Finance, as well as Planning and Zoning. And then we would start kind of public information sessions on the project. And then you would actually your board would be voting on this on December 15th. And so my recommendation would be, if there was a need to have another session on this, more information, we could schedule this, we could piggyback the special meeting that you have in December set up, early December. We could also talk more about Academy again for questions and additional information. And then the idea with that in January 11th is the meeting when the Board of Selectmen would then be taking this, and this was all parallel with the school plan. So we're just basically piggybacking this onto the school plan, and this would go to referendum in February. And then I think finally it just comes down to, why are we doing this? Why a community center? And I think it really highlights, this really creates a lot for our community. It preserves a landmark building that the town overwhelmingly wanted to preserve. And that was a message that came out loud and clear during those, developer presentations almost 3 years ago now, that people didn't want to lose the ball fields. They didn't want to lose this building to, commercial development. The other thing, it repurposes something. So we're taking something and preserving it and repurposing it for public use. It provides needed space that we've demonstrated there is a need, and a gap for what our community offers. We're the only town along the shoreline that does not have a community center like of this size, or not of the size, but just that of this breadth. And it offers obviously an auditorium, which has been a big, issue. And I know the school is going to be going through modifications, but this is going to be a very different kind of theater, and it's more situated for a community theater. It'll be the heart of our downtown. So now people are going to drive to Madison, have dinner, and then go to the theater. Look at what the Kate has done for Old Saybrook. And this is a little bit smaller, but it's not that much smaller than the Kate. So I think it provides a great community opportunity for that. It also solves some space needs that the town has, and helps us avoid some costs that we might have to make in other buildings to accommodate those needs. And then there's this big picture planning piece of this. It creates a cultural corridor, as I talked about earlier. It generates economic activity downtown, and I think it really also creates this cornerstone for a historic campus. And we were talking about trying to develop a more holistic plan for all our historic properties in town, so that they're part of a cohesive vision for the town. And then finally, everybody benefits from this. If adults and seniors are going to get a lot out of this for different programming activities, and event space to tap into. I think the Madison youth were talking about having a bus service going from the Green Hill campus after school to the community center, so kids after school can go down and attend a rec league at the gym, or take a theater class or an art class. So it provides all this kind of things year round, because a lot of our great recreation amenities, unfortunately, are restricted by weather. And I know that Austin's learning, and I know Scott Erskine struggle with this all the time, that what do we do with all these kids if it rains and where do we put them? And so we're always balancing those things. And here we've got a lot more space for other opportunities. And then finally, I think it helps Madison businesses because it creates year-round traffic to our town to, use our restaurants, shop in our stores, and just enjoy our community. It creates a destination because of the programming that would happen in the community center. So with that, it was a very long presentation. I understand. I'd be happy to open it up for questions. And also, like I said, offer another opportunity to talk about this to your board. If you guys want to have another opportunity before you actually have to vote on this to talk about the project.
Excuse me, Peggy, if I could add one final comment about the potential economic benefits. Towards the end of 2019, our good friend, the late Dick Pissarro, and I visited and did a lot of research on other community centers throughout Connecticut. And we put together a report about the potential economic benefits to the downtown area to include a community center and academy with the cornerstone of the library on the other end of town. Tomorrow morning, I will, by email, I will forward that report to all of you on the Board of Finance so you can read it. It's thoroughly researched and documented with a lot of very reliable data. So I'll send that out to all of you tomorrow morning.
Okay, so I will, with that.
Do you have any questions for Peggy or Scott or Al or Bill?
Yes.
Fillmore?
If I may.
You may.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that excellent presentation. I think I saw it a week or two ago when you gave it to the Board of Selectmen, so it was just as good then. This is a question, I guess, for youth and family. You set up a space down in the basement, and then a separate space up on the top floor. And I'm wondering, I was going to ask the question about your existing business or your existing building until Peggy brought it up that it's still apparently in decent shape. I know it's too small for you. I understand that you need more space, but what happens if you instead of taking two big tranches of space, you continue using the little building right next door, and that would free up more of the academy for community use. It's you're separated right now. You're separated by 2 floors. Now you'd be separated by 100 feet of grass.
So I appreciate the question. I think we've approached this process by not asking for a specific project to address our needs, because we know $2 million to build us our own building is not a way to address this issue. It's not cost effective, and we don't need that. So we've been open to different ideas to address the space issue. So I've said consistently, the best, one of the things that would really help us is to have all of our programming under one roof. And getting into Academy gets us under one roof. It does have us on 2 different floors. And some of that too is to get the 6,000 square footage of space that we need for what we do. We couldn't get it all on the top floor. That would take away too much space from the community needs for that floor. And having that space on that lower floor really fit. Now, if the feedback to us was, keep some of our operations next door, that's something that we would be open to. I would just say, honestly, it would be less than ideal, because again, it's just, yes, it's next door, but it's not as good as being all in the same building.
Dave Fillmore.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions for Peggy or Bill or Austin or Scott? Katie?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Scott, if that's all right.
Go ahead, Justin.
Scott, how are you, Scott? Being on that facilities committee, I remember during the process we were talking about options for you. So my question, I just want to make sure you're comfortable with. we're talking about like being in your own building, or really, I think it was more about being part of a community center building, given sometimes the sensitivity of some of the people that you're working with. So obviously you've gotten comfortable with that, but maybe you could kind of share your thoughts with that for the benefit of the group.
So that was a huge concern for us. And that top floor space, so that's the spaces where we would centralize most of our operations, and that would include our clinical spaces and our social service spaces. We did ask for that to be created as a secure area, so it would have its own door. And we would have control over that door, so that that for us meant that we would be creating a more privacy, so people would enter our offices. And I think to make it known to the public that coming into that space didn't mean that you were coming for counseling, because of all the programming that we do. It would provide enough, enough reason to come into there, and for people not to feel like they had to. It would look like they're accessing counseling or help when they could be coming into our area for any reason at all. So it did. It was. I appreciate the question, Justin, because that was a huge concern for us, and still is. And it was, I think, addressed by giving us that privacy and that controlled door within that space.
Thanks, Justin. Katie, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. My comment is I love the idea of having Madison Youth and Family and Beach and Rec all in the same building, especially given the proximity of the senior center. I think having all different generations being able to both register and access the space at the same time is great. As a parent who used to have to go to town campus and then run their kids across town to either the surf club or various other locations to access the programming, I think it's a great idea, and I think you'll get more participation because of it. My question is the infrastructure bill that we've been hearing so much about, is there any possibility that this might mitigate some of the cost for this building in particular?
I think that especially if some of the mechanical things that as I was talking about earlier, that, we could go for paying for some of those kind of newer technologies. They're definitely focusing heavily on encouraging, but I don't know enough about it yet. Right now we have kind of big, broad buckets of stuff that have come out of it. But there's some other funding opportunities that have also happened that I think that, that the state has identified as well, that, I'm hoping we can go after funding that way. So I don't know enough about it yet.
Any other questions? Justin?
Yeah, John. Just Peggy, on the schedule on your slide, there was a lot of info there, so I apologize if I missed it. But is it between now and the referendum early next year? Is there any more public hearings or public opportunities, or are we assuming that obviously a lot has already happened for the public? To learn about it.
We've scheduled. You'll see on the timeline. We're planning on doing 3 different public information sessions. So there'll be probably 2 in December and then 1 in January. So there'll be opportunities for the public to see this. Right now, it's just been all board presentations, so the public's kind of learning it through that. And then, like I said, your board, if you want another crack at this before you actually have to vote on it, we can certainly schedule another discussion on this, with your schedule. And then the Save Academy group is actively looking to participate in those public information sessions as well. So they're the ones that really have been living with this project and Bill, and a part of this, living and breathing this for years. So they're going to be an important voice at those public information sessions.
Any other Peggy? And we'll pull the board afterwards, and if they want another, we'll have you piggyback on the December 6th or something else. Is there any other questions for Peggy? I just had 2 quick comments. First of all, having another draw to your downtown is extremely important. You have the library, of other things, but it's going to help a lot of different people. And I think that's a good thing. And the more you can do, the better. And I like Katie's point about the infrastructure bill. Hopefully there's some other money we can get to reduce our burden. But I think it's a great idea, and bringing people to your downtown will always helps. And there's a lot of other with the youth and family services you can do. I mean, I like to see more activities. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Chelsea Piers in Stanford, but they have everything there. Basketball, say hockey rinks, but they draw from all over, and it's amazing. And the other comment, Peggy, was for you. A building committee, a permanent building committee that's volunteer, that's qualified, will help you immensely with everything, not just your planning, but also going through the RFPs, making sure you're getting the best dollar bang for your buck. It's if you get a really good volunteer building committee and make them 4 or 5 year or however you want to do it and get the right people, it really will help.
Yeah, we've been lucky that we've had good ad hoc ones for specific projects, but I think, to try to tap into those people on a more permanent basis, it would help us so like when we look at youth and family services building, a lot of ideas we've talked about internally, really good ideas. But this, rather than doing an ad hoc for that, let's put it in this facilities committee and then everybody can look at the whole picture and make decisions. So.
Yeah, we had the ad hoc and eventually you had a permanent building committee. I'm going back years for anybody. And then if you needed somebody as a liaison for a specific project, that was fine, but it didn't help a lot. All right, any other questions? Well, thank you, Peggy and Bill and Austin and Scott. We appreciate it. Peggy, I know you're going to stick around for a little while longer, right? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, Austin, and Bill.
All right, so we have next up on our agenda is to discuss and review the process for the senior tax freeze. Fillmore, I know you were there, and I hope you don't mind leading this discussion, but if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, you and I were had a meeting just a week ago with several members of the town staff, Austin, who I think is probably still with us, with the tax assessor, the tax collector, Stacy, I'm probably forgetting somebody, to just have a quick oversight. And as the ordinance specifies, the committee will consist of 5 people, 2 of whom will be Board of Finance members, and that's John and me. And so we have to come up with 3 other people. We asked that Austin to reach out to the senior committee to see if someone on that committee would be interested in joining. And then the other 2 people, rather than getting some people who would be advocates for one thing or another, we wanted 2 townspeople who could look at it objectively, could look at all the different possibilities. So if there happens to be a reporter from the Source or the Shoreline Times listening in, eavesdropping on this, please put out that the town is would like to have some volunteers from the community join this committee. Now, what we've learned, and I think what we knew in the back of our minds all along, was that as written, the ordinance is an extremely complicated procedure. There's tons of paperwork, hours of investigation on each one, because they're all tied together along with the not only the senior tax freeze, but also the tax abatement and a little bit on the tax deferral program. We're one of the few towns that have all 3. Austin pointed out that there were, I think, in the 300s of people who have signed up for this. So this is not just a half a dozen people. So there's a ton of paperwork for each person. So it's very cumbersome. And so we will be meeting to, once we get some more people, we'll be having some meetings to go through this. Highly unlikely that it will get done in time for, I think there was a February deadline when people have to apply for all this. So that's highly unlikely that we would get this done in time, but at least we're hoping to have some good discussions and good solutions that we can come up with for next year, and ease a little bit of the burden on the town staff, plus giving decent breaks to our hard up senior citizens et cetera. So again, looking for some volunteers to join with John and me and somebody from this senior commission on this committee. John, did I miss anything?
No, you did a good job, and you mentioned how cumbersome some of the paperwork is, and we're gonna look at all of it, so yeah,
Yeah.
did an excellent job. Any questions for Fillmore? Thanks, Fillmore, nice job. So we have item number 8 is a review of the 2022-2023 budget workshop calendar. It was pointed out to me that February 21st is President's Day. Thank you, Katie. You probably should change that one, but I would like you to look at it, see if there's anything glaring. Any other comments or thoughts on the budget workshop calendar? Okay, we're good.
Looks good. So you're saying we'll change the 21st to? some
Yeah, I
other-
think it makes sense, Phil, to change that one day from
Yeah.
President's Day.
Yeah.
I don't know if Stacy's on the call. I think we should change that day.
16.
I got it.
Yep, I'm here. I got it, John.
Thanks, Stacy. Okay. We also have the 2022 meeting schedule. Does everybody get a chance to look at that?
I think we actually have to vote on this, don't we? Legally?
Yes.
Mr.
Not
Chairman,
on the budget. Good.
do we have to vote on the budget one also?
I don't believe so, no, because that's just a continuous.
Yeah.
You don't
I
really
think
open and close that
tonight-
meeting.
John, I think tonight was more of a review and then we could vote on it at our next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Fine, thanks, Stacy. Yeah, because I didn't see any action on that. I just want people to look
Yeah,
at it, see if the
true.
dates. Jean's not even here, so see if the dates work.
Yeah.
All right, any other item on the schedule is the 2021 to 2023 board assignments for liaisons. I'd really like to know what people are interested in. I don't think we need to vote on it either. I know there's a couple we do, but if you could just email me what you're interested, obviously if you've done it before and you're happy doing it, that would make it a lot easier. Or I could just appoint you, which, but I think we would a lot better if you kind of said, I'm interested in this, whether it's economic development or the police commission or whatever it would be. So that's how if you just let me know, that would be great.
John, may I have a moment?
Sure, Peggy.
Yeah, just curious. I didn't look at the list you have from your packet, but I want to make sure the American Rescue Plan funds is included on that list because we have the ad hoc committee. And we need 2 members of the Board of Finance, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, and 1 from the Board of Education. We really want to get that committee going. So that's the committee that's going to basically kind of going forward, decide how we spend, our $5.3 million of American Rescue Plan funds.
Give me one
So
sec.
you guys want to make, have those choices done. And then there's 2 members of the public. So we've been getting applications in. And then we're going to appoint, this committee in December.
So you want that done before our next meeting or we can
No,
dive
I
to
think
the
it can,
special meeting?
I'm trying to think, you're not, well, I would probably put it on the special meeting because we want to get it all kind of settled in December because you're not meeting till later in December, right? So I would note
We
that.
can piggyback to December 6th.
15th. The 15th is the regular meeting, but we do have the special meeting on the 6th.
Can I
And
wait
it
till
may
the
be that
15th?
the 15th is fine. I just got to see how we're doing on, because we have to interview the members of the public and then our board we're going to probably appoint on Monday, I think, those representatives, which we got to figure out still too. So,
Let us know if the 15th doesn't work, then we'll move it to the 6th. But it was not on there, so. Okay, we have item 11, discuss and take action to appoint 2 board members to the CIP. I know, Justin, you were on that, is that correct? And I know Jude was. I know Katie has expressed interest to be on the CIP committee. Justin, do you still want to? You there? Katie?
I've been on it for 4 years as a Board of Ed rep, so I feel pretty well versed, but I'll do whatever you need, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
I
sorry,
think
John,
you
I
and
was trying
Justin-
to unmute myself.
It's all right. I thought you didn't want to talk
so-
to me, that's all.
Yeah, right. No, so I'm certainly willing to, unless you know, there's others or you have a preference or an idea, but I'm happy to stay on it.
I'd be happy to have you stay on it unless Fillmore has an objection. And Fillmore's on enough things, so that's okay. So we do need a motion to appoint Justin or reappoint Justin and Katie to the CIP
So moved.
committee. Thank you, Fillmore. Second. Anybody? Sandy, wave your hand.
Second.
Second by Sandy. There we
I'll get
go.
you for that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, abstention, that motion carries. Thank you, Justin and Katie. Congratulations. Discuss and take action to appoint one public member to the CIP. I'm open for suggestions here.
Have we had a public member in the past couple of years that we could re-ask, Stacy? I don't,
Actually, my this, sorry, Stacey, but it's in the Board of Finance. We never got to appointing a public.
So we don't have to do it
I don't
tonight,
think
I'm
so.
sure.
I don't think so. I was
Yeah.
thinking of Gus, but I do think that Gus Horvath was a Board of Selectmen public member.
Why don't we
was that
table that
Joan?
for now?
I think, no, Joan was Board of Ed.
Jonas Board of
Joan was
Ed,
Board of Ed. Okay, so I don't think the Board of Finance had one.
Kevin Schroeder wasn't Board of Finance? Or
He
was,
was, you know what, but he resigned.
okay, understood.
I want to back up for a second. I think Justin's right. I don't think we ever really appointed someone to re-ask, and we just never did it. So we can do it at the next meeting if we find
Yep.
someone that wants to do it.
Yep.
I'll reach out and see if I can send anybody your way.
Okay, thanks. Your way. So, all right. We have review of the financials. Stacy, you want to go through that? We haven't, I know Fillmore is going to have a question there.
Fillmore.
No questions.
I don't know. I provided you with the expenditures and revenue, the budget versus actual. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions. We didn't do the big line item transfer for the salaries yet. We'll do that probably within the next month or two.
Yeah.
So unless anybody has any questions, I don't really have any input at this point.
I thought it looked good. Any questions? Thanks, Stacy. So we have our first select woman report. Peggy's here, and then we'll do the liaison reports. Go ahead, Peggy.
Talked a lot tonight, so I'll keep it somewhat brief, but I would like to comment about the special appropriation that the Board of Selectmen will be voting on Monday to recommend that we pay for the $1.3 million land acquisition out of undesignated fund balance versus putting it in the bonding. And I take a little issue, Fillmore, with the discussion about transparency. I think we've been very transparent that this is part of the transaction. I think we're just making a calculated decision. We have to pay these people for the land. I think it's 60 days after the referendum passes. So we're going to have to use undesignated fund balance anyway. And so the question is, do we then reimburse ourselves later through bonding? And that process could take quite a while. And you know, we have a very robust undesignated fund balance. And I think that this board has had multiple discussions that I've participated in. We took $1 million out for the pension. We did $500,000 for coastal resiliency. We still have, and Stacy has the most recent numbers, we're probably $8 million over our required fund balance. So to borrow at 2% or 3% while it's sitting and earning, how much, Stacy, is it earning right now in undesignated fund balance in terms of interest?
0.05.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much.
So that was the thinking, because we're going to have to use fund balance anyway. So the question is, do we pay ourselves back and then incur more interest expense, or do we just pay for it? And this was a discussion that was had between the Galen Colley, who requested this, as well as Jean, who had supported it in our tri-chair discussion. So, and I think in terms of the public process of this, This will be voted on Monday's meeting, and it will go to a town meeting if the Board of Finance approves it in the end of December. So it will have a public, vote on it. And so I think we were just trying to be practical and save the incurring expense. The town has paid cash for property before, and I think the Lesage property was purchased in anticipation of expansion of the school using cash out of undesignated fund balance as well. So I do feel, I understand that you're talking about the total project cost, but I think the public has been, educated this entire time, and what they're voting on is the bonding amount, not the project cost. So that's why we kind of chose this path, but I appreciate your comments, and I would hope that maybe we can encourage you to support it when it comes to this board in December. So in terms of other things to update, we're going to be starting the budgeting process soon, and meeting with staff in December. So that's going to be a lot of work that we're focusing on. The American Rescue Plan funds, what you'll see in CIP, I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to read, the transmittal letter that was sent with the CIP proposal that I put together. But we did pull out a number of projects from CIP and are making a recommendation that they get funded through American Rescue Plan funds. So that will help, I think, a little bit in terms of how we look at the funding CIP this year. So there'll be more discussion about that. It's tricky because we're going to budget for something. We don't know the outcome of the referendums, and we haven't made a final determination about how we're spending all this American Rescue Plan funds. So it will be tricky from a budgeting standpoint. And I think one thing that we need to think about is, do we put off certain decisions till after the referendum as well? So in terms of final budget. So I just want to kind of be open-minded about that we did this last year too, because we had these unknown referendums, but here we actually are scheduling the referendum now. So we really know there's a definitive date that we'll be able to make some decisions. So more conversations to be had on that, but the town employees are working hard to start pulling a lot of that information together. And I think that's it. Stacy, was there something else I was supposed to update? It was, that was, I think
you got it.
Okay, great. Okay. But thank you. So in terms of the timeline, I just want to highlight again, our board, please attend our board meeting Monday night, because these two referendum items will be on that. Okay. Oh, I will mention one other thing. The third thing that we were hoping to have on the referendum in February is obviously the sale of OLM Prep. And that was another thought that, we're hopefully going to be having, an additional $2.3 million coming into the undesignated fund balance. And one of the things that had been promised to the community when Island was closed is that the proceeds from any sale of that would go back into the schools. And so I guess it was also the thought was you're following along what you've already told the community, redeploying those funds to purchase land for the new elementary school. So last thing, thank you.
Thanks, Peggy. Anybody have a quick question? And go ahead, Katie.
I just historically, when we bought the Lesage property, because that was the original site for the schools, that was not factored into the proposal for the new build or the school renewal plan, correct? So there is precedent, in other words, of buying land that doesn't necessarily get wrapped into the scope of the project cost, correct?
That was outside of the project costs.
Okay, that was my only question.
But it was needed for, wasn't it needed for ball field? So it had like an immediate need use that was put on it. So it wasn't, I think that's kind of apples and oranges, to be honest. It's not like part of a project. It was a project. They needed the land to build the softball fields.
I think they were willing, if I remember correctly, being on the board at the time, they were willing to separate the ball field from the actual property, but the town bought the whole thing.
I believe we bought the whole thing because we had a lease purchase option.
We were renting.
We were paying the lease, and a portion of our lease payments was towards the option to purchase, and then it came up and we decided to just use our funds that were set aside and purchase the property at that point.
Thanks. Liaison reports. Hey, Fillmore, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple. The first, the library. I don't know if anybody got down there to play the mini golf, hitting the ball around the library. Yeah, that was sort of fun, wasn't it, Cindy?
I should have taken my kids.
Yeah, they raised, the Friends have raised $8,000 and still counting. So that was good. And not boasting, but I hit a hole in one on that number 19 and got a little teddy bear for that.
Well, it sounds like you're boasting.
Yeah, no, I'm just stating fact. Also for the library, they're having this, I think we've all been invited to this Toast of the Town event on December the 2nd. It starts at 5:30. I forget how long it goes, 7 or something. And there's free champagne, etc. And then on the pension boards, we met this morning, and things are looking good with that. We're still have not gotten the actuaries' reports for the current year, so we don't know what the funding level is quite yet. On the fire department, we've talked about a little bit in the past that there's going to be a review and an updating of that. Because as you may recall, they, after, I think I have these numbers right, after 20 years of service, these are for the Madison Hose and for the Nomads, after 20 years of service, then they can start drawing $5,000 a year at age 65. And this was enacted, I think, in 1990. So that's, 30 something years ago. And so they've been asking for some sort of updating on that. And I guess they're going in, there's two different directions that's are going to be resolved, or at least talked about some more in a couple of the next few days. Either to update the $5,000 to, like current dollars, or to do something that pays them so much based on years of service, sounding a little bit like a defined benefit kind of thing. So anyway, there's two different options, but at some point it's going to come to us, and because it's whatever they do, it's going to cost some money. We're going to have to bump up that fireman pension fund, not just a couple $100,000, but probably some seven-figure number. I'm guessing. That's just me guessing. So those are the two boards that I'm reporting on.
As always, good job. Thanks, Fillmore. Citizen comments. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak?
Gus Horvath has his hand
Oh.
raised.
Gus, welcome.
Hey, Phil, how you doing? What I would like to do first, though, is to congratulate Kate and Cindy. I don't know whether to congratulate them or give them what, but
Condolences.
glad to see you two folks on the board, and it's an alumnus from the 1980s. Couple of things. Number one, the list of whys for the community center. Just to throw another one in. I know some of you folks on the Board of Education who've been there for a while know that I did demographic studies for the Board of Education as well as the town for years. And it's kind of slipped under the radar, but the town of Madison actually lost over 650 population from 2010 to 2020. And the state projections for the next 10 years is that's going to continue. And one of the things I think we should look at is, and it's not the most important one, but just to keep in the back of your mind, that the demographics in the town of Madison, we have one of the highest average ages of any town in this town in the state of Connecticut. And we should be doing, in my estimation, anything we can to bring younger people into the community Otherwise, in another 20 years, it's going to be the Madison senior community. The other thing is, the last thing is on your liaison to SIP. I've been liaison twice, interrupted by 1 year. And if don't come up with somebody, I would be happy to represent the Board of Finance. And everybody
hired.
agree with me except Phil. So I think that, we're doing okay.
I think we would be honored to have a member of the first graduating class of Academy High School.
Okay.
So it begins.
See what I mean?
All right, sorry,
Okay,
Gus.
thank you
know,
and good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Anybody else in the
stepping up,
public?
Phil, Gus. That's exciting.
Oh, wait till these new rules come in. I'm telling you, it'll be kangaroo court, money being thrown all over. Got to pick a charity. I'll explain next meeting. Anybody else in the public would like to speak?
Was it?
No, I just. Is that it? Second time, third time, there being none, public information session is closed. I want to say thank you to everyone for serving and for being and the support, and looking forward for all of us working together to do the best possible job we can for the residents of Madison. So thank you. Someone want to throw out Fillmore?
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Katie. Second.
I'm sorry, yeah. What did you say, John?
Second.
Forget it. You dropped the ball, Fillmore. Cindy seconded. All in favor?
Well, technically, you don't
Meeting
need to.
adjourned. Thank you, everyone.